So a former Black Lives Matter member, or at least a participator in their protests, Elias Rodriguez, executed a Jewish couple, and proudly proclaims that Palestine needs to be freed.
Outside! No. Free! Outside! No.
Look at this piece of
Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free!
gas chamber for this a-hole.
Yeah, absolutely. We just gotta move on.
Okay, so we're at the scene of the attack here. There was a shooting here about an hour ago outside the Israeli museum, the Jewish museum, and the rumor has it that there were members of the Israeli embassy who were targeted or injured. We're still looking at the details.
Because of the day that comes, Jesus Christ is the King of the Jews, let us not forget. He's pro.
So this is the piece of human debris we're going to talk about today. This is a man who has proudly participated in the so-called protests of the hate group Black Lives Matters. He was also associated with the party of Socialism and Liberation because, of course, he was. And naturally, the Marxist-Leninist group has tried to deny that he was ever a part of them, or at least hasn't been a part of them for many, many years. And they want to reject any association with the crazy nut job. But the reality is, my friend, this is the direction that this anti-Semitism, this racism, will inevitably head towards. These people, these mal-educated douche nozzles, who don't seem to understand that when it comes to Palestine and when it comes to Hamas and Israel, Israel has been under attack for over 20 years. There have been hundreds, if not thousands, of rocket attacks prior to the massive October 7th massacre led by Hamas. And Israel, each and every time, responded what we call proportionately, because the U.S. or the UN told them, hey, you can only strike back so much, and Israel would say, okay. And of course, this is modern garbage in warfighting, which inevitably just keeps the situation rolling forever. If one side never wins, the war never ends. And Israel has been under constant attack for decades now. And so now that they're finally saying to hell with this, and we're going to end this war once and for all, because after all this, with all the and the moaning about, Palestine and blah, 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 the reality is, at any time, Hamas could unconditionally surrender and bring this war to a close. But of course, that will not happen because the members of Hamas know that this ends with them in the gallows and they don't care about the people of Palestine, so they're not going to surrender. It's no different than the Nazis in World War II. The U.S., the Allies, Russia, none of them were going to stop meat grinding their enemies until they completely surrendered. Because that's how you win wars. The military is not meant to be the police. They're meant to break things and kill people. That is their purpose. Here's the article from the New York Post talking about Elias Rodriguez. What we know about this idiot, this moron, this douchebag. The suspected terrorist busted for fatally shooting two Israeli embassy staffers has ties to a radical left-wing group that spearheaded Black Lives Matter protests and fiercely advocates on behalf of Palestinians, because of course they do. And I want to point out, by the way, that, BLM is a massive hate group. They hate white people. They hate capitalism. Their goal is to tear it all down. They want reparations. They want to punch white people in the face. It's bad. This group is the alt version of the KKK, just with different colors. Now, Elias Rodriguez allegedly confessed to gunning down the couple outside the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. late Wednesday when he was heard or we saw him chanting Free Palestine. As investigators probed a motive behind the horrific anti-Semitic bloodshed, the guy was a racist piece of shit, an anti-Semite who hates white people, who hates Israel, who hates Jewish people, and clearly doesn't know history about Israel versus Palestine. Let's see, look at this piece of crap. Now, Rodriguez was once linked to the Party for Socialism, which we talked about, and see that regularly posts anti-Israel rhetoric on social media, like end the genocide, Israel out of Gaza now. And they had just posted that apparently just hours before the D.C. shooting. The group confirmed Rodriguez's membership in the wake of the shooting as it distanced itself from the violence, because of course they do. We reject any attempt to associate the PSL with the D.C. shooting, even though we're crazy nut jobs. Elias Rodriguez is not a member any longer of the PSL. He had a brief association with one branch of the PSL that ended back in 2017. We knew of no contact with him in over 7 years. We have nothing to do with the shooting and do not support it. In a since-deleted article on the group's Liberation news outlet, Rodriguez was described as a member who participated in 2017 Black Lives Matter protest, the hate group BLM, outside of the home of then Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel. The protest was held on the anniversary of the death of a 17-year-old black teen, Laquan McDonald, what a name, who was gunned down by a Chicago cop. Rodriguez rallied or railed against Amazon during the protest, accusing the company of not sharing its wealth with black residents. Amazon's whitening of Seattle is structurally racist and a direct danger to all workers who live in that city. So do we in Chicago and all across the country want a nation of cities dominated and occupied by massive corporations where only the rich and white can live? And the vast majority of us must live on the edges of society and of the city and society, living in deeper and deeper poverty. Again, the indoctrination is complete. You have the trifecta: anti-white, anti-Jewish, and an idiot who believes in communism and socialism and doesn't understand that everything he believes in is evil. Socialism, communism is a blight and an evil on the world and has only brought misery and tyranny to anyone it has ever touched. And when it comes to his racism, I mean, what else is there to say? He's just a racist piece of shit. And then as far as the Gaza-Palestine drama, look, anyone who doesn't know their history, you could almost give them a pass for thinking, oh, those mean old Israelites are they're really hurting them Palestinians. Why aren't they letting in aid? Because Hamas hasn't surrendered. And every time in the past, for over 25 years, Hamas has continuously fired rockets, made suicide bombings, attacked Israel over and over and over again. And every time they put a pause or a ceasefire that allows Hamas to rearm. And so after slaughtering over 1,000 innocent Jewish kids who were just partying it up at a peace rave on October the 7th, they've had enough. They want this to end once and for all. You know, there's an old term, around, find out. Well, right now, Palestine is finding out. And I, for one, have no sympathy. I mean, I feel bad for the people of Palestine who are suffering right now, but they could always force Hamas to surrender. The population could simply say, to hell with this. But they don't do it. And until the war's over, the worst thing that Israel could do would be to allow Hamas to recoup. They can't do it. It would be fatal. But of course, people like this Elias Rodriguez is either oblivious to this fact, or because he's a racist piece of crap, he doesn't care. Because he just hates Jewish and white people, which I'm kind of torn between which is more likely between those two options. I mean, he's definitely a piece of shit here. So let's see. Now, Elias Rodriguez's bio on the website, which was deleted after the shooting, of course, noted that he holds a bachelor's degree in English from the University of Illinois at Chicago. And prior to joining the History Makers, boy oh boy, in 2023, he worked as a content writer for commercial and non-commercial firms in the technology space, both national and regionally based. He enjoys reading and writing fiction, live music, film, and exploring new places and murdering Jewish people. I added that last part there. Meanwhile, Rodriguez was being interviewed by D.C. Metropolitan's Police Department and the FBI early Thursday as authorities scrambled to piece together his history. Witnesses described seeing a distressed Rodriguez pacing outside the museum just moments before the gunfire rang out, and people came to his aid and brought him water, thinking that he needed help, even though he was the murderous a-hole, without realizing he was the suspect. When the police arrived, he pulled out a red kefefe or kefye or whatever, and repeatedly yelled, "Free Palestine," like a douche nozzle. Now, footage showed the alleged maniac, the douchebag, wearing a suit jacket and slacks, being hauled away in cuffs in the aftermath, which we saw. So this is the conclusion to the lunacy. Whenever you see these a-holes out there protesting, "Free Palestine," or "River to the Sea," which of course is a genocidal chant, this is the kind of thing that you can expect to see from these sort of deranged lunatics. There's not much else to really say about this. They need to give him the gas chamber, or at the bare minimum, life in prison. These kinds of punishments need to be harsh. It needs to be life-altering. And even before murdering, these people that cause chaos, that riot and protest and take over buildings, they need to be getting 10, 15, 20 years in jail. You got to put a stop to this crap. Having a political opinion, being pro-Palestine, as weird as it might sound, if to someone who knows the historical context here, that's fine. But being a violent a-hole, you got to put a stop to it. And we have tolerated and we have allowed it for way too long. And so has most of the West. You're seeing protests and riots all over the world. And at some point, you got to put a stop to it. So that's that douchebag. And hopefully the next time we update it, it'll be him getting convicted. That would be nice.